Have you plateaued in your fat loss efforts? We're gonna troubleshoot a few reasons why this may have happened. So the first thing we need to talk about is, have you actually hit a plateau? So just from my years of experience working with clients, typically a lot of people think that they've hit a plateau when they actually haven't, and it's actually just a lack of patience. So that's a hard truth to hear, but really when it comes to fat loss and being on a diet or in a fat loss phase, patience is your best friend. And when I say that, sometimes we may see some plateaus happening on the scale, even within weeks, but if you haven't truly been plateaued on the scale for like over 3 weeks, I personally don't consider that a plateau. And the reason being is there's a lot of different factors that go into your scale weight. So to really see, like if it's been like 3 weeks and you're really trying to determine, okay, I've hit a plateau, what should I focus on? So the first thing I would say is look at the other metrics, right? Have you been tracking body tape measurements? Have you been taking progress pictures? Are you seeing how your clothes are fitting? Like, are they fitting better? Are you feeling better, right? These are all different metrics that will tell you if you're, losing body fat and if you're changing your body composition. So the scale is not the end all be all. And so we need to understand that there's going to be fluctuations in the scale. And sometimes when we think we've hit a plateau on the scale, it hasn't actually been a plateau. We just need to be a little bit more patient. But if all of those things, haven't changed, if your body tape measurements aren't changing, if your, progress pictures aren't changing, if you're not, your clothes are fitting the same, the scale's staying kind of stagnant, there are a few things that you can kind of troubleshoot to make sure that you're still moving along. So let's talk about a few of those. So the first thing that you want to do is be sure that you're actually tracking your food accurately and consistently. And so when I say that, like, one of the sayings that you've probably heard before is what gets measured gets managed, right? So if you're not tracking your food accurately and consistently, then it's gonna be really hard to see if you're actually in a calorie deficit, which we need to make sure that you're in so that you can lose body fat, right? So making sure that you're tracking accurately is gonna be super important. And when I say accurately, I mean, how are you tracking your food? Are you using, measuring spoons? Are you just eyeballing things? Are you using a food scale? So a food scale is gonna be the most accurate way to track your intake because you're actually weighing whatever you're consuming, right? Versus if you were eyeballing things, sometimes our perception of certain things can be a lot more than we're actually consuming. So one common example of this is, having a tablespoon of peanut butter. If you actually weigh out a tablespoon of peanut butter, you're gonna be really, really disappointed. Trust me, most people who consume a tablespoon of peanut butter, they weigh it out and it's like 3 tablespoons of peanut butter. And that might not seem like a big deal, but a tablespoon of peanut butter is like 100 calories. That's an extra 200 calories and you might not even notice it. So that's just one example. Making sure that you're tracking accurately is gonna be super important, especially with the more calorie dense foods. So like nut butters, nuts and seeds, those are very calorie dense. So if you're eating a lot of those and you're not, taking count of how much you're consuming, that can very much put you in a, not in a calorie deficit or put you even in a calorie surplus. So we need to make sure that we're tracking those things accurately and consistently. And if you have hit a plateau, getting really, really dialed in on that and maybe taking the eyeballing away for a little bit, even just for a few days, get a food scale, see what you're consuming and see if what you've been tracking is accurate. That's going to allow you to really make sure that, what is in your food log or, your MyFitnessPal or whatever it is, making sure that that's accurate is going to be the first step. So the next thing you want to make sure that you're doing is tracking all of the, I call them LN&Bs. So it stands for licks, nibbles, and bites. So this is one of the ones that I get caught up myself too when I'm, tracking myself. Sometimes I'll have like a nibble of something here or like a lick of something there. Those don't seem like they're a big deal in the moment, but if we go back to your day and you actually account for all of those licks, nibbles, and bites throughout the day, they're gonna add up quite a bit. And they can even add up to, hundreds of calories that you're not even accounting for until you think that you're eating, at the intake that you should be eating for to lose, whatever intake that is for you, to be in a calorie deficit, but you might not actually be because you're not tracking all of those licks, nibbles, and bites. So those add up really, really quickly, especially from things that I mentioned, like the nut butters and the nuts and seeds. If you're just, going into the cabinet and grabbing a handful of nuts and not tracking that, that's like an extra 200 calories there. Or if you're having like a spoonful of peanut butter, it could be another extra 200 calories. And, those things those aren't bad or anything like that, but if you're really trying to get dialed in and you've hit a plateau, making sure that you're tracking all those licks, nibbles, and bites and being super honest with yourself is gonna go a long way. So another common thing that happens when you've potentially hit a plateau is that you actually might need to recalculate your calorie intake. So if you initially went into a fat loss phase or on a diet and you had an initial calorie intake that allowed you to be in a calorie deficit and you were seeing weight loss or fat loss from that intake, if you've lost a significant amount of weight, even just 10 pounds, you are physically becoming a smaller person, right? So if you have lost, 10, 20 pounds, you probably the amount that you're eating probably needs to be a little bit decreased because you're literally physically becoming a smaller person. So you don't need as much energy to maintain that smaller person, right? So if we just think about it practically, the amount of calories that you've started off on your, fat loss journey, if you've lost about 10 plus pounds, you may need to recalculate that calorie intake to make sure that you're still in a deficit. Because one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle when it comes to how many calories we burn throughout the day is just our body weight. So how much we weigh will determine a large amount of how many calories we're burning during the day. So you may need to recalculate that if you've lost 10 plus pounds and to make sure that you're still actually in a calorie deficit. So another thing to troubleshoot if you've hit a plateau is just making sure, this kind of goes back to the first thing I said, making sure that you're tracking accurately and making sure that you're tracking your weekends too. So I've seen this a lot with my clients where we're super, super dialed in during the week and we're in our routine, we're maybe eating some of the same food, so we're used to that. And then on the weekends, we are like really happy with ourselves that we are super dialed in on the week and we kind of want to celebrate that. And we go out and eat with friends, have some more alcohol, things like that. That can add up. So you can actually be in a calorie deficit during the week and then your weekend can kind of unravel that. And by the end of the week, you might not actually be in an overall calorie deficit. And that's something to think about as well. Like calories don't reset overnight. And this is something that I like to look at with my clients. Like we look at calories on a weekly basis so that we can make sure that that weekly intake is what we're paying attention to. Because like I said, your calories don't reset overnight. If you're in an average weekly deficit, that's what matters. And so if you are, dialed in Monday through Friday and then you go out, Saturday and Sunday and you eat a bunch of stuff, whatever it is, have some alcohol, there's nothing wrong with that, but you just need to make sure that you're being truthful with what you're tracking and being accurate and consistent with that. Because that's one of the biggest, troubleshooting things that I've seen with hitting a plateau is just, being super dialed in during the week and then just not paying attention to the weekends. And it can be really frustrating. So just make sure that you're accounting for everything you're consuming and that you're in an average weekly calorie deficit. And just a quick tip on that, something that I do implement with my clients and myself too, is that like I said, weekly average deficit is what we want. So if you find that you are super dialed in Monday through Friday and that's easy for you and you can just go into your routine, you can actually implement what we call calorie cycling, which is just consuming a little bit less calories, during the week when you're in your routine, you're working, you have your food prepped, and then that will give you more calories to consume over the weekend so that you have a little bit more flexibility and you can consume a little bit more and go out to dinner and have, a little bit more freedom there. But then by the end of the week, you're still in that weekly calorie deficit, so you should still be, on your way to losing the body fat that you're looking to lose. So that's a quick tip just to, if that fits in your lifestyle. So the next thing you want to do is make sure that you're auditing your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That is simply just your movement outside of formal exercise. So I like to refer to this as step count with my clients. So this is a big thing. We tend to see, and this is what the research shows, is that one of the biggest determinants of fat loss plateaus tends to be that we stop moving. So if we have less calories coming in, we tend to, just want to move less, right? So if you're in an energy deficit, typically you have less fuel coming in, and that's gonna just inadvertently cause you to want to move less. So if you're not paying attention to how much you're moving, you might actually start to become a little bit more sedentary, and that can affect how many calories you're actually burning throughout the day. So making sure that you're auditing how much you're moving throughout the day, just general movement, is gonna be super, super beneficial, and even potentially upping that movement a little bit can be helpful in getting over that plateau. So if you start tracking your movement and you see that you're hitting like maybe 7K steps a day for, on average for the week, bumping that up to even just 9K steps a day, that can go a long way. So auditing your movement, even, instead of sitting at your desk throughout the day, standing throughout the day, setting an alarm every hour to get up for 10 minutes, parking farther away at the grocery store, walking up and down the aisles in the grocery store, making it as easy as possible to get more movement in, taking the stairs, whatever it is, that is gonna be a really great way to just make sure that you're moving more, and that's gonna go a long way over the course of a week, a month, a few months. So just make sure you're auditing your movement, and that's gonna be super, super beneficial. A few more things. The next one would be prioritizing sleep and stress management. So if you've hit a plateau, just making sure that you're getting adequate sleep every single night is gonna be super important, because that is gonna make sure that you are, setting your day up for success. If you wake up and you feel like crap, the rest of your day is just probably not gonna go super well, and you're probably gonna, not wanna stick to your eating plan. You're not gonna wanna stick to what you have, planned for the day in terms of exercise and things like that. You're not gonna have as much energy for that. And so that's just gonna have kind of like a domino effect. So making sure that your sleep is in check is super important, and also making sure that you're not just super stressed out all the time, right? Because when we're super stressed, it tends, at least for me, when I'm stressed, I tend to grab some food or chocolate or whatever it is to kind of get that feeling away, right? So stressing is a big thing. So making sure that you are just implementing techniques that can help with stress management, whether that's meditation, breathing exercises, when you get stressed out, going for a walk outside, taking a bath, having a cup of tea, whatever it is, paying attention to sleep and stress management is gonna be super helpful to help you get past a plateau if you haven't been paying attention to it. Another thing to think about is potentially taking a diet break. So if you've been dieting for a long period of time, if you've been in a fat loss phase for a long period of time, it might just be time for you to take a break. And diet breaks are really just a period of time where you're literally just taking a pause in your fat loss efforts. You're literally just putting things on pause and saying, okay, for a week, I'm gonna bring my calories back up to maintenance. I'm gonna hang out there for a while. And then once I can kind of, stay there for a while and get my mind right again, it's gonna be so much more efficient when you go back into the calorie deficit. So diet breaks are super important from a psychological standpoint, and just taking a break from dieting, because dieting is hard. There's a huge mental component to being in a fat loss phase or going on a diet. And if you just go, you're gonna eventually burn out, and it's not gonna be a good situation. So if you've been dieting for a long time and you've hit a plateau and you're kind of just burnt out, you might need to implement a diet break. And like I said, all that is, there's different ways you can do it, but just increasing your calories back up to your maintenance intake, which is just the amount of calories you can consume to eat to maintain your weight, that is gonna be a great, great step to make sure that you can continue pushing along in your fat loss efforts. So those are just a few of the things to consider if you have hit a plateau. Some things that you can troubleshoot, can ask yourself, can make sure that you have dialed in. But the biggest thing is just make sure that you are being consistent and patient. I know no one wants to hear that, but I promise you, if you can be consistent throughout the process, even if you go off track or mess up or go out on the weekend and blow it off, like that's okay. No one's perfect. Just get right back on track. And that is where, the magic happens. So being consistent and just making sure that you're patient with the process. Fat loss in itself, for some people, can take a bit of time, and you need to just make sure that that time is beneficial, because within that time you're actually building habits that are going to help you maintain that fat loss in the long term, right? So that's one of the biggest issues with losing body fat and losing weight. We know that in the research, I think it's about 80% of people who lose weight actually gain it back. And so the issue isn't necessarily the fat loss or the weight loss, it's the maintenance period afterwards. So just making sure that you are, implementing and securing those habits that you're building up throughout the fat loss phase is going to be super important. So, losing weight fast can be motivating, but it might not be the best thing for most people. So anyway, if you've hit a plateau, those are a few things that you can troubleshoot to help you continue on your way to getting the body composition that you want. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to learn more about nutrition, fitness, or metabolic flexibility, you can check out our website, metflexlife.com. There you can find our podcast, MetFlex and Chill, our nutrition and exercise programs, our latest blog posts, free recipes, and much more.